Testing. The state of Missouri has executed Marcellus Williams despite concerns that the convicted murderer might have been innocent. Williams died by lethal injection shortly after 6 p.m. today at Missouri State Prison in Bonne Terre. He was convicted and sentenced to death in 2001 for the 1998 murder of Felicia Gale, a social worker and former St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter who was fatally stabbed during a daytime burglary. Republican Missouri Governor Mike Parson, Missouri Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court all rejected last-minute attempts to halt the execution, ignoring clemency pleas from Williams' lawyers, prosecutors, and members of the victim's family. Missouri Department of Corrections Communications Director Karen Hodgman emailed Newsweek the following handwritten statement from Williams. All praise be to Allah in every situation. Williams submitted his final statement to the prison officials in the days before his scheduled execution. Officials said that Williams ate a last meal of chicken wings and tater tots shortly before 11 a.m. Tuesday and was visited in his final hours by Imam Jalahi Qasim, who accompanied him to the execution room. Tonight, I feel that it is my duty to eulogize Marcellus Williams. Sadly enough, we do not find information regarding where he was born, we don't find much information about his likes or dislikes. We don't find much information about Marcellus Williams, except that he was a convicted murderer. And that's sad, because he was so much more Marcellus Williams looks like me. He looks like my friends. He looks like my family members. He looks like my sons. If we are to fully understand the magnitude of what has transpired today, we must realize that Marcellus Williams is me. Marcellus Williams is us. There should be a feeling of hopelessness that should have accompanied your spirit today around 6 p.m. There should have been a spirit of helplessness and powerlessness. Almost a feeling that nothing has changed. Yet we know that everything has changed. But there's one thing that we were reminded of today, and that is that Missouri has not changed. On today, as we awaited the 6 o'clock hour, I took note that we did not hear from the regular cast of characters. They were silent on Marcellus Williams. I didn't hear from Dr. Umar, even though I never hear from him because I don't pay attention to him. Didn't hear from Al Sharpton, didn't hear from Ben Crump, didn't hear from Louis Farrakhan. A black man sat awaiting his execution, and there was no one in the world that was able to make a phone call on his behalf. If that doesn't strike you, well, it strikes me. There's no one in the world that was in a position to make a phone call to save the life of another innocent black man. Historically, the purpose of lynching is to remind Negroes of their insignificance and their powerlessness. That is what is laid out in the infamous doctrine of Willie Lynch. That is how the apartheid system, which was made up of less than 10% of whites, were able to control 90% of the population. They reminded those that were in the lower levels of the caste system every day by lynching and murder and mutilation that their lives were insignificant and that their life meant nothing. Even though plantation owners were outnumbered dramatically all throughout the South during slavery, the reign and the rule of terror kept the slaves, who outnumbered massa sometimes 30-1, in check, because they were reminded every day by the bodies hanging from the trees, by the dismembered people walking around with no hands and no feet and no eyes, and the scars on their backs, and the memories of they that had been whipped to death or had been killed while running for freedom by dogs, and in some cases even eaten to death by animals, barbecued, burned at the stake, tarred and feathered, dismembered. All of these things were put in place to remind the majority population that their lives meant nothing. Today's events with Marcellus Williams would be a reminder to some, but the reality is that you cannot remind people of what they do not know. I come tonight to remind you of the historical role of the state of Missouri. I come to remind you of the Dred Scott decision of the 1850s. I come to remind you of the Missouri Compromise that was related to the Louisiana Purchase. I come to remind you of Dred Scott Scott versus Sanford in 1857. I come to remind you of Roger Taney when he said that there are, and I quote, no rights which a white man has or was bound to respect. I come to remind you that it was the state of Mississippi that led to legislation that said that our birthright as citizens was no longer valid, and that it was unconstitutional for any territory to ban slavery. I come to remind you that Missouri sent the world a reminder today. Just a reminder that America used to be great. Ha ha. And we are bound and determined to take America back to those days where African Americans had zero constitutional protections and rights. Missouri gave us a reminder today. Missouri is a red state. It is a declining Midwestern state, and no one is moving to Missouri. I don't care how many championships the Chiefs win, no one is moving to Missouri. They just got a decent airport in Kansas City because no one was and is moving to Missouri. Now, I know those folk in Kansas, the state, are saying, we're not Missouri. Well, you're not, but you're close. Missouri used to boast of 18 electoral votes, and now they're down to 10 because no one is moving to Missouri. Missouri is a declining red state, and they are the kinds of people, and I hate to generalize, but they historically have been the kind of territory that needs to hear Donald Trump's message of division and hate, and they need to hear that we're going to make America great again. And today, they sent a message. They sent a message to all of America, Black America in particular, that you may be, or it may appear that you are on the verge of electing a second Black person to the highest office in the land. You may be on the verge of an emotional and an intellectual high, but we are going to give you a reminder today that you are irrelevant, that you have no power, that you have no victory, that you have no rights, and that the best nigger is a dead nigger. We learned that from Ronald Reagan. And we keep learning that same lesson from Republican regimes, whether it is governor, whether it is the Supreme Court, whether it is a mayor, whether it is a president, they keep giving us the same message. It is unfortunate that we refuse to be students of history. It is unfortunate that we allow certain elected officials to remove history from our schools. Once again, we are powerless. Once again, we are hopeless. Once again, we have no leverage. Once again, that refusal by the governor and the refusal by the Missouri State Court and the refusal by Donald Trump's Supreme Court to stay the execution of this man, this innocent man, was a message. Well, I've got a message tonight. And the message is to the Black man. For all those who love the Black man, I hope you're listening. Black man, this is a reminder that you are heaven on earth. Black man, this is a reminder that you are the seed planter. Black man, this is a reminder that you are the tiller of the ground. Black man, this is a reminder that you are more than a man. Black man, this is a reminder that you are somebody. Black man, this is a reminder that you are the soul of the earth. Oh, Marcellus Williams, my heart goes out to you today and forever. For today you needed an army to rise up. You needed for someone to say, if they take one of us, they're going to have to take all of us. You needed someone today to rise up with integrity and with power, with political power, economic power. You needed someone to rise up on your behalf. And no one did. People made noise, but they made the noise of non-authority, of non-power. They made the noise of weakness. When will we resolve to establish ourselves in such a way that we can protect our own from the injustices that we continue to face in all of the systems of this world on a daily basis? When will we begin to love one another in such a way that we manifest our power? I want to end with yet another acknowledgement that everything has changed, yet nothing has changed. I want to say a word about the shame of America. And America ought to be shamed. And we ought to be ashamed of this catastrophe that is seeking the highest office in the land. I wish we would read John Hope Franklin, From Slavery to Freedom, A History of Negro Americans. There's no one in this country that should be exempt from reading this book. On page 354, you have this illustration. The Shame of America. It asks a question: do you know that the United States is the only land on earth where human beings are burned to the stake? The flyer goes on. This full-page advertisement appeared November 23rd, 1922 in the New York Times, Atlanta Constitution, and several other leading newspapers. It was part of the NAACP's campaign to secure passage of the dire anti-lynching bill. What you may not know is that from 1890 to 1900, there were at least 2 blacks hung, lynched every week for 10 years. Every week, 2 blacks in America hung for 10 years. You do the math. The shame of America in 4 years, from 1918 to 1921. There we go. 28 people were publicly burned by American mobs. I want you to notice that word American. 3,436 people were lynched from 1889 to 1922. That's that 10-year period I was talking about. Will this ever stop? Will this ever end? will we ever gather together and protect ourselves? For what crimes have mobs nullified government and inflicted the death penalty? Alleged crimes, you reading this? Then crimes against person, murder, 1,200, rape, 871. Crimes against person, 615. Crimes against property, miscellaneous crimes, absence of crime, 3,436. Why some mob victims died. This is a detailed flyer. Not turning off the road for a white boy. Being a relative of a person who was lynched, you could get lynched because you were the relative of a person. Jumping a labor contract. Being a member of a nonpartisan league. Look at this. Talking back to a white man. Insulting a white man. That's the death penalty. Is rape the cause of lynching? Because you know, us black men, we have to have us a white woman. You did note that Marcellus Williams was executed for killing a white woman. Of the 36 people murdered by the mob in our country, only 571, less than 17%, were accused of the crime of rape. So rape couldn't be the cause, but it could be the excuse. 83 women have been lynched in the United States. What could a black woman have done to be hung from a tree by white folks? Do lynchers maintain that they were lynched for the usual crime? And notice, the lynchers go unpunished. Well, they offered a remedy. Wow. They offered a remedy. The dire anti-lynching bill is now before the United States Senate. The dire anti-lynching bill was passed on January 26, 1922 by a vote of 22 to 119 in the House of Representatives. The dire anti-lynching bill provides that capable state officers and lobbyists, I think that says, officers and shall be tried in federal court. Mobs, those are mobsters, moblets. Federal court to act and that a county in which lynching occurs be fined $10,000 recoverable in federal court. Hit them in the pocket. The principal question raised against the bill is upon the ground of constitutionality. The constitutionality of the dire bill has been affirmed by the Judiciary Committee of the House of Representatives, the Judiciary Committee of the Senate, the United States Attorney General, legal advisor, Judge Gay D. Goff, and the Department of Justice. You see how these black folk were handling business? The Senate has been petitioned by the dire bill. Lawyers, jurors, including 2 former attorney generals of the United States, state Supreme Court justices, state governors, archbishops, 85 prominent churches, mayors of large cities. See how they were handling business? The American Bar Association is meeting in San Francisco on August 9, 1922, adopted a resolution asking for the further legislated by Congress to punish and prevent lynching and mob violence. 15 states of conventions, 1922, 3 of them Democrat, have inserted in their party platforms a demand for national articles to stamp out lynchings. Do you mean to tell me that they've been killing black men since 1922? The dire anti-lynching bill is now before the Senate. Telegraph your senators today and tell them how you want to be enacted. Did you see how these black folks were organizing? If you want to help organization, which has brought light to the fact about lynchings, the organization which is fighting for 100% for the same people at the same time, but for all people, white or black. Look at NAACP, fighting for white folk and black. Send your check to J.E. Spingarn. You all know who J.E. Spingarn is? And then you see the advertisement for the NAACP. Just in case you haven't figured it out, it is 2024. That means we've been doing this for 100 years. My goodness. Enough is enough. Enough is enough.